We begin with breaking news. In just a few minutes, President Trump is expected to make an announcement about a new fleet of large vessels for the U.S. Navy. The president will be joined by Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Secretary of the Navy John Phelan. This announcement will be made from Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida. White House correspondent Mike Carter is in West Palm Beach. We're going to go to him in just a moment. Also, some photos released from the Epstein files by the Justice Department and then published to the DOJ website were inexplicably taken down, but now they're back up. Why? Criminal defense attorney and former Epstein attorney David Schoen joins me later this hour. And Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry picking up a new side gig. In addition to being governor, he will now be the special envoy to Greenland. More on that, including why the president thinks we need that special envoy, later in the show. But first, White House correspondent Mike Carter in West Palm Beach, Florida, with the very latest. Mike?
Hey, Greta, good evening. About 30 minutes from now, we're expecting to hear from President Trump, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and John Phelan, the Secretary of the Navy. And this will be about a Trump-class battleship that will be the epicenter of President Trump's new golden fleet of warships that he wants to install. The president has long called America's warships terrible looking, covered in rust. And this new warship is much like what we've seen at the White House, a revamped look in Trump style. Now, recently, Greta, the U.S. Navy has announced plans to build a new class of warships as part of President Trump's Golden Fleet. It's a bid to revive America's military shipbuilding. Navy Secretary John Phelan recently announcing the plan that seeks to have the first new ship ready by 2028. Phelan says the goal will be building the ship smart from the start and then upgrading it in steps over time.
We will field capability at the speed of the threat in real time, not the comfort level of bureaucracy. We will deliver on a wartime footing, and we will unleash the American industrial base to do it. Competition, accountability, and real output.
Well, today's announcement from President Trump comes after that surprise announcement on Friday when the president said that U.S. airstrikes targeting ISIS members had taken place in Syria. According to CENTCOM, U.S. and Jordanian forces struck more than 70 ISIS targets in Operation Hawkeye Strike, killing multiple ISIS members in retaliation against the terror group after it killed 3 Americans last weekend. Here's what the president said Friday night in North Carolina.
I ordered a massive strike on the terrorists that killed our 3 great patriots last week. 2 soldiers, 1 interpreter, all great people. And it was very successful. It was precision.
All right. The president may be here in South Florida, but not at the White House. Still, a lot of news coming out of South Florida this weekend. Greta, you had Special Envoy Steve Witkoff meeting with Ukrainian and Russian officials in what Witkoff calls a productive and constructive meeting. Still, it doesn't look like any resolution has come from that 20-point peace plan proposed by the U.S. Volodymyr Zelensky, writing on X today, he plans on making a statement tomorrow regarding where we stand with this peace proposal. But according to Witkoff, there was no breakthrough this weekend. President Trump, he'll be down here in Florida through January 4th. Greta?
Mike Carter, thank you. The Trump administration is increasing the pressure on Venezuela. Over the weekend, President Trump enforced new sanctions on oil tankers traveling to and from Venezuela. As of now, the United States military has seized 2 Venezuelan oil tankers and is now, according to reports, in pursuit of a 3rd Venezuelan oil tanker. National Security Correspondent Carla Babb has the latest. Carla?
Hi, Greta. The pursuit of the tanker off the coast of Venezuela was the 3rd such operation in about the span of a week. The tanker called Bella 1 was heading to Venezuela before shifting northeast into the Atlantic Ocean. That's according to ship tracking data. A U.S. official told Newsmax the Coast Guard was pursuing a sanctioned dark fleet vessel that has helped Venezuela evade sanctions while flying a false flag. The Coast Guard and the Pentagon referring Newsmax to the White House. No official word from the White House on the latest operation just yet, but White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly confirmed the seizure of a 2nd oil tanker on Saturday. She said that tanker contained sanctioned oil and was a falsely flagged vessel operating as part of the Venezuelan shadow fleet that trafficked stolen oil, funding Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's regime. Now, outlets that track these vessels said that the tanker, called the Centuries, is registered in Panama and is not on the list of tankers under U.S. sanctions that is publicly maintained by the Treasury Department, but Panama's foreign minister said today that the Panamanian flag ship intercepted by the United States violated ship registration rules. He added, according to local media, that the name of the ship was changed and the crew identities did not match Panamanian records. The U.S. seized a sanctioned oil tanker named the Skipper on December 10th. That tanker sanctioned in 2022 for smuggling oil funding Iran and Iranian-backed terror groups. Now, days after the December 10th seizure, the Venezuelan Navy started escorting oil vessels out of Venezuelan territory, but according to officials, none of the vessels escorted so far include sanctioned ships like the Skipper. And Greta, as you mentioned, there's that big announcement that we thought the media suspected could be about Venezuela. We now know that it's going to be about the Golden Fleet, but you never know what kind of questions he'll be asked.
And he always does take questions, which is all right. First of all, these tankers, what's the value range of the cargo that we're seizing?
Great question. Depends on the size of the tanker, depends on the price of oil, but it could be anywhere between $35 million and $250 million.
Okay, so and some of the ones that we're seizing are empty, but some, I mean, the Skipper had oil in it. The Skipper had oil. All right, the one that we're chasing, the Bella 1 that we are now chasing, it does not have a cargo on it. It was going to pick up a cargo, as best we know.
That's what we understand at this point. And so it basically was heading towards Venezuela, realized that the Coast Guard or others were coming towards it and decided to turn around and change course.
All right, what's the New York Times reporting that since it's turned around, it has sent out 75 alerts. It's broadcast to nearby ships. They're distress signals.
Sounds like it's distress that is being chased by the Coast Guard. We don't know why the Coast Guard hasn't boarded the ship yet. You know, it boarded the ship before with the Skipper. We saw the video. Boarded the ship on Saturday. We're still wondering, why are we still trailing the ship? Maybe we'll get an update from the president.
Well, if it weren't so serious, it must be amusing, our Coast Guard out there in the middle of the ocean chasing an empty tanker ship, and they're sending out 75 alerts like that they're in distress. But anyway, well, we'll see what happens. Anyway, Carla Babb, thank you. Former ambassador to Venezuela under President George W. Bush, Charles Shapiro, joins me. Good afternoon, sir. And first of all, generally, what do you make of what's going on between the United States and Venezuela?
Well, clearly the president's trying to turn up the pressure on Maduro to leave. And I'm sure he's got a whole range of options before him that people are prepared. And he's gone from blowing up boats carrying drugs, which had no impact whatsoever on Maduro, to now seizing these oil tankers. And I'm not sure what's next, but I'm sure there are other options that he can select.
Well, it appears that the people of Venezuela don't like Maduro, that they elected somebody else in the last election, but Maduro said that he won. But that what's protecting Maduro is his military. And I suspect that with a lot of these dictators, that his military is protecting him because he pays the military. If he doesn't get the money from a narco trade, or if he doesn't get it from sanctioned oil, I don't know where he's going to get the money. So is my analysis correct that his military is key, and that he needs to keep funding his military?
Well, the military is certainly key. Cutting back oil shipments, the money that comes in from oil, hurts the Venezuelan state. It doesn't hurt Maduro directly. And that means they'll have less money to pay, whether it's the military or teachers or pay for hospitals, all of that. And so that's going to increase the pressure. But as you know, despots around the world continue to live well despite sanctions against their government. So what the president's got to do is figure out how to make it more attractive for Maduro to leave than to stay.
Well, the Venezuelan economy has already, for all intents and purposes, has collapsed. The inflation rate, I read a number last week that I still can't, I've still searched and searched to see if it's wrong, is 556% inflation. That compares to ours at 2.7%, 556%. So the people there are hungry, they're starving, they can't afford food. So the people, I don't know how even any amount of money right now in sanctioned oil is in any way going to revive what was once a very successful economy. I would think that the only way things could change is if Maduro leaves and he gets help from other countries.
Well, you're right about Maduro leaving, but he's got to want to leave, or somebody's got to make him leave, and that would be the military. And so that's what everybody's watching. The economy is essentially dollarized now. I mean, prices are in bolivares, but anybody's got access to dollars. That's what people are charging in stores, and that's what people are paying.
But you can pay for, I mean, but there can be a price on a loaf of bread today, and even like, you know, a couple hours from now, that price can go skyrocketing even from an already skyrocketed price, right?
In the local currency, but if you got dollars, the price doesn't go up.
You know,
So I'm
it's
saying
interesting
some price
looking
is stable in dollars, but not in local currency.
You know, it's interesting looking at Venezuela, which is a failed experiment in socialism, because what happened is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that everything was fine, and they were able to support their people and pay them well and pay for their health care and their education until about 2014, when the price of oil plummeted. And when the price of oil plummeted, suddenly the government could not be so generous with the people, and that's when things began to really collapse.
I would date it before that, but yeah, oil prices stayed relatively high to the early teens, and that money went to the oil company in Venezuela is owned by the government of Venezuela, so all the money from oil goes directly into the government coffers. The government really just spent the money, poured it out on stuff that made no return. You know, started projects they never finished, paid students student loan to go to schools that hadn't been established yet, paid people to be in the militia and they realized if you didn't go to drill in the militia, you were going to get paid anyway. So they just poured the money down the drain. And then when oil prices dropped, they just simply could not maintain it. At some point, the inflation rate was over 1 million% a year.
You know, it's so tragic to look what happened to Venezuela, you know, in all these years, and it's getting less and less fuels. Do you have a crystal ball? You want to tell me what's going to happen, or do you give me a prediction?
I don't have that crystal ball. What the president's going to do is I assume, is going to turn up the pressure. Maduro's got to decide if he wants to go live next door to Bashar al-Assad in Moscow, or hang on in Venezuela, the way the dictators are hanging on in North Korea and in Nicaragua. And getting rid of a dictator, getting rid of a despot is a really tough undertaking.
Well, I don't think he wants to go to Cuba, because that's not such a great place. President Lukashenko told me about 10 days ago that he would take him in Belarus, so that might be an alternative to Moscow, but we'll have to see what happens. Former Ambassador of Venezuela, Charles Shapiro, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Greta.
Coming up, we have a new alert. What now? Find out when the record continues.
You served your country with honor. Now get the benefits you've rightfully earned. Paul R. Lawrence has written the book every veteran should own, Veterans Benefits for You. This step-by-step guide breaks down what you need to know, from financial compensation and disabilities to information for dependents and parents. This book is a must-read for all servicemen and women. Get your free copy today with our special offer. Call the number on your screen or go online to order.
Michael is our youngest.
At 1, we found out he was profoundly deaf.
Then told he's also going to go blind,
He has Usher syndrome, a rare genetic condition.
causing him to lose his vision and hearing.
There's no treatment. Most doctors have never even heard of it.
Every day feels like a race against time.
And finding a treatment would change everything.
It's the Blue Compass RV annual Blue Tag clearance. Save over 40% on select new RVs during our largest sale of the year. Plus, every RV comes with a 1-year VIP membership to RV Complete, a $5,000 value. Visit us online or in store today.
Samaritan's Purse is ready to show the love of Christ to people in the most difficult circumstances. But we can't go without you. With your support, we can build homes, heal hearts, provide critical relief, and bring hope to a world in need. Donate now at SamaritansPurse.org. Let's get to work in Jesus' name.
This isn't your average pill. This is Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks.
Rose Sparks is a fast-acting solution because it dissolves under your tongue.
Rose Sparks.
Guys, get started today.
Connect with a provider to find out if Rose Sparks are right for you.
Okay, it's time for my favorite, an alert. Yes, has the media gone wild? CBS News now facing a backlash. The news organization pulled a 60-minute segment just hours before it was set to air. The segment focuses on the conditions at El Salvador's Seco prison. That's the prison where last March the administration sent Venezuelan migrants illegally in the United States. Now, the decision to pull the 60-minute segment was made by CBS News' brand new editor-in-chief, Barry Weiss. According to reports, Weiss told the network the piece could not run without an on-the-record comment from someone in the Trump administration. Meanwhile, is a mega civil war brewing. Over the weekend, Republicans and conservative influencers gathered at Turning Point USA's annual conference. That conference, named America Fest, was the first since Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk was assassinated. One of the speakers at this year's conference was Vice President J.D. Vance. During his remarks, the Vice President addressed the friction brewing within the Republican Party.
I know some of you are discouraged by the infighting over any number of issues. Don't be discouraged. Wouldn't you rather lead a movement of free thinkers who sometimes disagree than a bunch of drones who take their orders from George Soros?
CPAC Chairman Matt Schlapp joins me. Nice to see you, Matt, and glad we have a lot of time to talk because there's a lot of problems going on and fighting within it. The Vice President says that it's a lot of good exchange of ideas. It didn't look so pretty at Turning Point USA this weekend. Everybody seems to hate everybody.
Well, I want to applaud the people who put on Turning Point. It's a very tough thing to do, to put on a big conference, and they pulled it together under terrible circumstances, obviously losing their leader to that terrible, dastardly assassination, and I'm sure it's been devastating for his family. That being said, now we have this situation where Donald Trump has knit together this very interesting of political coalitions, and this is his second term, and he's already a year into that second term. And naturally, people are beginning to say, okay, who's the next leader? And in that process, some of these fissures are exposed. I will just say one thing, Greta. I don't think there's as much division on the ground with grassroots populists and conservatives. I do think there's a ton of personal animosity amongst these famous people.
It is a ton of animosity. It is wicked. You've got Ben Shapiro saying, mocking Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson comes out and he mocks Ben Shapiro. Then you've got Megyn Kelly out there fighting. She throws a few punches. Then you've got Steve Bannon. Then
I agree.
It's like,
and it goes beyond that.
Okay.
Well, I'm just saying, I know I get more messages from people saying, well, I'm mad at this person, or I won't appear if this person shows up. And I would just say this, that behind all this is the fact that we just elected a communist in New York City. And the Democratic Party and the left-wing media is now back off the canvas. Trump had really taken over. They're getting their sea legs again. And they're beginning to see that they can make gains. And the House basically has a one-seat majority for the Republicans. This election is less than 11 months away. We have to remember that if we all spend all of our time fighting each other, we're just going to hand it over to the socialists and the Marxists.
But that is what happens. The Democrats don't have to say anything. They can stay mute on the sidelines when they see. Now, this is the younger generation of Republicans, Turning Point, who are at each other's throats visibly. But it's not limited to the younger generation. You've got the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank. That appears to be blowing up. All these staffers just left. They're furious, and they left. They went over to Pence's organization.
Yeah, there is a lot going on. Once again, I'm going to say I think the real animosity is amongst people who are celebrities online, who are fighting for the followings, right, of all of these young people online and other people online. But behind that are the people and the voters. And this is a coalition, which means that there's disagreements on some major issues within the coalition. But overall, these people are for Trump. They're for Trump's agenda. I think we can keep this together for a number of years and have even more victories. The Vice President's right. It's okay to have disagreements. Disagreeing is not canceling someone. It's just not okay to go so far as to say that we're going to accept anti-Semites or bigots in this coalition.
Well,
I think that's too far.
But that's what they're calling each other. And really, the people you're talking about, the podcasters. That's what they are. The podcast, Bannon, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, they're the ones that got up there, and they're the ones who were throwing the gasoline on the fire as they were going after each other. It was quite entertaining to watch, but very disheartening to the.
But I think they care about these issues, and look, this is what they feel, and they have every right to.
It's not how Reagan would do it, is it? It's not how Charlie Kirk would do it.
I would just say, I can speak for myself.
Okay.
I come from the world of politics. I'm 58 years old. I've done this my whole adult life. I understand that Donald Trump put together something unlike we've ever seen. And CPAC played a big role in that because we were the first ones to invite a lot of these Democrats or former Democrats into the coalition, right? And there's a lot of them. And so we've built this amazing juggernaut. And I, for one, don't want to do anything to rip it apart, even if I have a moral disagreement with someone else who's in that coalition.
You better tell that to some of your colleagues who are podcasters, because the way they were throwing Molotov cocktails at each other, it doesn't seem like they have the same sort of idea, because they have a whole level of certainty and overconfidence that they are so individually right as they attack each other.
But the other thing is, it's, what are the incentives, right? So, like, I'm trying to run a conservative group. We're trying to keep the coalition going.
Are they just trying to get subscribers?
Well, I mean, that's a little part of the market, right? You're trying to get hot. You're trying to pop. You're trying to have a moment. And this is what...
How intellectually honest is that within the conservative movement if those people are trying to be hot or trying to pop to the point that they're throwing Molotov cocktails at each other?
You've used names. I've used no names.
No, I know
I
it, but it's no secret who it is. I mean, they're all over the media.
But I do think there are some people that appeared on that stage and expressed their moral convictions in extreme terms, and I have respect for the fact that they did it. I just understand the politics behind it, which is what are we gaining from that?
I get that they express it and have, and I defend their First Amendment right to do it, but I just don't understand if you're trying to build a movement, if you're trying to hold a coalition together, a really bad idea is to attack those who are sort of the loudest people in the coalition and to attack and call them anti-Semites and conspirators or whatever. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but I'm just saying that using those names is not an effective tool.
As I watched this, my reaction was, as the older guy who's been doing this for a long time, is there are so many small groups, small to mid-size pro-America groups, pro-freedom groups that are doing all kinds of great work. And they probably didn't get invited to speak, and they're not that famous, but they're doing this amazing work. And I think what the conservative movement should do is a couple of things. We should support Donald Trump because he's a transformational leader. He's doing things we've always wanted to have happen. No one had the guts to do it. We got to support him. Second thing is we have to understand these congressional minorities are easily lost, and they're by a razor-thin margin. We've got to build those.
There's actually a poll. Some pollsters, Trump pollsters, who said, I think, came out over the weekend and said that the Republicans are like 7 points behind from the midterms. So the Republicans, something like that. I mean, it's
look,
a snapshot of the moment.
I could go in a polling discussion. I would say this: the idea that this is a slam dunk would be a huge mistake. Supporting Trump, making sure we push the agenda, making sure we grow the allies in Congress and governorships. But the other piece is we have all these underfunded groups that are doing great work, fighting Christian persecution, fighting human trafficking, trying to fight for government restraint. We've got to help them.
But is the party being blown up by some of these people?
No.
Okay.
We're going to be able to persevere through this. I do think we are having some rough moments. Hopefully the bloodletting will be over soon. And we got to keep our eyes on the prize, which is if we fight each other, the communists are going to defeat us in less than 11 months.
It's like letting some of the dirty laundry in the family seep
I
out.
have 5 daughters. I'm used to this. We can all agree on something. I promise.
All right. George Conway, who is married to Kellyanne
I know
Conway,
who he is.
Is running for Congress as a Democrat for Jerry Nadler's seat.
He's
and
being honest, finally.
What? He's
finally being honest. He's been acting and talking like a Democrat, so you might as well just run as a Democrat. It's really ironic because George Conway was one of those lawyers in the 1990s who was fighting Clinton and supporting Newt Gingrich and all the change. And you have to wonder with these kind of people, were they lying then or are they lying now?
We'll see what happens to him. I think he was unhappy he didn't get a position in Trump.
I will exchange Bobby Kennedy for George Conway and Tulsi Gabbard and the rest of the people that have joined Trump any day of the week. You guys can have George Conway. We'll take these other folks.
Matt Schlapp, CPAC. Thank you. And now for more from the Turning Point USA AmFest. She is back. Just 1 month after speaking at the United Nations, rapper Nicki Minaj has graced a new stage. Yesterday, she made an appearance at Turning Point USA. Erica Kirk, the widow of the late Turning Point founder Charlie Kirk, brought Minaj on stage as a surprise guest. Here is some of what Minaj said.
I have the utmost respect and admiration for our president. He has, I don't know if he even knows this, but he's given so many people hope that there's a chance to beat the bad guys and to win and to do it with your head held high and your integrity intact. And if you're growing up in a world that tells you it's taboo to say something that the masses don't agree with, that's not okay. And we're not gonna have it.
Last month, the rapper made her first political appearance at the United Nations. She spoke about the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. Since then, Minaj has made many comments in support of the Trump administration. Coming up, a photo from the Epstein docs was released and then removed and then re-released. Why all this back and forth? That when the record continues.
You know Rob Finnerty. He's smart, bold, and stands strong for your values. Rob is fighting for you. Watch Finnerty weeknights only on Newsmax.
Falls are the #1 cause of injury to senior citizens. Falling downstairs can be disastrous. Acorn Stairlifts has the solution. Just don't fall. Sit, relax, ride with an Acorn Stairlift, the world's leader in stairlifts. That's right, don't let limited mobility keep you from going up and down your stairs, even outside. Call Acorn Stairlifts now for a free information kit and no obligation quote. Now you can safely ride with your Acorn Stairlift.
Now I don't have to worry about him climbing those stairs anymore.
And our Acorn Stairlift was very affordable.
Our Acorn Stairlift is definitely more affordable than moving.
The Acorn Stairlift has a padded seat and backrest for maximum comfort. It easily folds up for access to the stairway. 5 safety sensors stop your Acorn Stairlift if there is something in the way. And it even runs during power outages.
I am king of my castle again.
You'll be working directly with the world's leader in stairlifts. That's right, there's no middleman. Acorn's trained technicians professionally install your stairlift directly to the staircase. In most cases, in 2 hours or less. There's no need for special construction. We don't leave until you're completely comfortable using your Acorn Stairlift.
Don't risk a serious fall going down the stairs.
I was really surprised at how little it cost.
Call for your free no-obligation information kit and quote from Acorn Stairlifts. Just don't fall. Safely ride up and down your steps.
Give your life a lift with Acorn Stairlifts.
Call 1-800-908-4077 right now for your free information kit or visit our website today. That number again is 1-800-908-4077. Call now.
What are phytonutrients? They are naturally occurring plant nutrients that give fruits, vegetables, spices, and fibers their vibrant colors, unique flavors, and distinct aromas. Balance of Nature supplements include 47 different ingredients of fruits, vegetables, spices, and fibers. It's an easy way to give your body more of a variety of phytonutrients that might be missing from your everyday diet.
Go to balanceofnature.com and get the whole health system at our best price for life.
JB Smoove, what are you doing here?
I'm always here. I know what you're doing here, though.
A consumer cellular commercial. You know, we should get you signed up.
Aren't I too young?
We got deals for people over 50.
That sounds great. Sign me up. Make it happen, Teddy.
Right now, get your second month free. Call Consumer Cellular.
Nobody does insurance like the zebra.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Got you, Mike.
I just found the perfect policy at the best price for you.
Told you. Nobody does insurance like the zebra. We monitor your insurance and inform you of savings the moment we find it, so you never have to second guess your policy or your price. Find out how much you can save today. Hooves in.
We are standing by for President Trump. He's at Mar-a-Lago, and he is supposed to be making an announcement at 4:30 with the Secretary of War and Secretary of Navy. And, of course, the second he begins speaking, we'll go right to it. But in the meantime, on Friday, the Department of Justice released thousands of documents from its prosecution files of Jeffrey Epstein. The released documents were heavily redacted, meaning blacked out, so the reader could not read the redacted part. No client list was released. In fact, there was even a client list. But there are some key takeaways that is raising eyebrows. There is a picture of former President Bill Clinton in a hot tub with someone whose face is obscured, redacted. His face, though, is not obscured. White House Deputy Press Secretary Abigail Jackson posting on her personal X account, quote, per the Epstein Files and Transparency Act, DOJ was specifically instructed only to redact the faces of victims and or minors, end quote. Now, it's unclear when the hot tub photos were taken. Clinton's spokesperson says that the former president traveled on Epstein's plane 4 times in 2002 and 2003 for the Clinton Foundation. Spokesperson also says, quote, Clinton cut Epstein off when his crimes came to light, end quote. Meanwhile, there is a picture of another president in these released Epstein documents. That's President Trump. There's a photo showing President Trump with various women. On Saturday, this picture was removed from the website that the documents are posted on. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche defended the unposting and reposting of that picture.
The absurdity of us pulling down a photo, a single photo, because President Trump was in it, is laughable. And the fact that everybody's trying to act like that's the case is a reflection of their true motivation. But the reality is anybody, any victim's lawyers, any victim rights group can reach out to us and say, hey, Department of Justice, there's a document, there's a photo, there's something within the Epstein files that identifies me, and we will then, of course, pull that off and investigate.
Yesterday, the Department of Justice restored that photo to the website. DOJ says there is no evidence any Epstein victims were depicted in the posted files. Deputy AG Blanche also says that Friday's release and posting was several 100,000 pages short of all the documents. This has prompted Republican Congressman Thomas Massey and Democrat Ro Khanna to threaten Attorney General Pam Bondi with inherent contempt. That means Congress would fine or arrest Bondi and bring to trial those obstructing legislative functions. Criminal defense attorney who met one time with Epstein 9 days before he died, David Schoen, joins me. Nice to see you, David. Of course, you're always going to be said to be Epstein's lawyer, but you only met him once 9 days before. Is that right?
Well, I met him before that, and I had spoken to him and advised him for about a year before, but he hired me 9 days before to take over his criminal case.
What do you make of all these pictures, really thousands and thousands of documents, all from, the first ones went to Congress, came from the Epstein estate. These are from the criminal prosecutions.
Yeah, I quite frankly, I think they're a lot of nothing in terms of substance. I think that there's an effort to make Jeffrey Epstein a matter of policy, and it just doesn't work. I understand people's prurient interest in wanting to see photos, just like, you know, they want to see People magazine or scandalous websites, that sort of thing. But it's really something that's risks paralyzing the government, and I don't understand it.
You know, I don't want to be a conspiracist because that's obviously a bad word these days, but I'm still I don't feel like I have sufficient information that I'm satisfied on his death. Because Dr. Baden, who I respect more than any other forensic pathologist, said that it was consistent with homicide, he thought, more than suicide. And then you've got the fact that the cameras were off or didn't work around his cell at about the same time, both of which is not unreasonable to ask for more information or to get a greater investigation. Do you think this has been his cause of death, or what happened to him has been sufficiently investigated? Are you satisfied?
No, I'm not. I also am not a conspiracy theorist, so I don't really have a theory about who killed him, and I don't subscribe to conspiracy theories about it. However, I also agree that I insisted that Michael Baden participate in the as an independent in the autopsy that was conducted, and it turned out the family had a connection to him anyway. I also consider him the top forensic medical examiner in the world. I've done a show or two with him discussing this. He said in all of the years he's been doing this work, he's never seen injuries like this consistent with suicide. I add to that anecdotally that I met with him, as I say, 9 days before. He was very eager for me to take over the case. I was told that I was the only lawyer he trusted with his life. He had a fine group of lawyers behind him also, and he hired me that day. And that's 9 days before he died. I also am told that the day before he died, he was giving out orders consistent with the theory of the case that we were working up, to giving the instructions to other lawyers and other people who might work on the case. So none of that seems consistent with suicide, but, you know, of course, nobody really knows at this point.
How do we get to the bottom of this? I mean, what needs to be done? Because, you know, not that we need to necessarily satisfy, you know, what I want to learn, but I mean, how do we find out whether or not indeed it was suicide or homicide at this point?
I truly don't think we ever will find out. I'm satisfied by Michael Baden's findings that it was not suicide, but I don't have.
Well, then someone murdered him. It's not natural causes. Nobody has said that. Either someone murdered him or he accidentally got his neck, entangled on something in an accident. But that seems unlikely. It's either murder or suicide.
Right. I think it was murder. And, ordinarily in this kind of case with this kind of offender, someone would take credit for it, frankly, as a badge of honor, but not in this case. So I don't know whether there was something that went on. I really don't know. I don't want to speculate, but I'm sad. I don't believe that it was suicide, and very little is going to dissuade me from that, given Michael Baden's findings.
Okay, so what about the cameras that went off? I mean, you've got Dr. Baden, who as I say, to me, he's the gold standard. But now you've got the cameras that have these sort of mysterious lapses or didn't work. What do you know about those?
I don't know anything about them except that it's an extraordinary coincidence, one might say. I know that, Jeffrey Epstein's brother has been pushing and pushing to try to get a more full investigation. What looks bad is, these things being summarily dismissed, without any full explanation. We're told right away, this wasn't suicide and that's the end of the investigation. But we really are never told what the basis was for the investigation. For example, it seems to me, logically, if I met with him 9 days before and he was asking for instructions and wanted to meet with me that day also, or the day before also, that I would have been interviewed to see what kind of frame of mind he was in and so on, but I wasn't.
Well, he certainly is. I guess he's certainly not, did I say it, sarcastically, so he's not a sympathetic character, having done horrendous crimes. So he's not. So there's never been sort of any effort to sort of get to the bottom of it, except that I think his family's owed it, and I also think everyone else is. I think the victims are owed that. I think the rest of American people, since we've spent so much time on this, and even Congress has, but they don't seem to want to try to dig a little deeper. The Congress doesn't, and neither does the Department of Justice.
Yeah, I also, quite frankly, would like to see the entire matter die a natural death. I really think it's quite unfair. You have people really trying to milk this for as much mileage as they can, and to what end? You're going to see pictures of celebrities
well, I'll tell you to
and
what
famous
end.
people.
I'll tell you to what end. I read over the weekend a woman who complained, she's probably a girl, in 1996, and she submitted a report to the FBI about child pornography. It's completely ignored. And then apparently in the files today, 2025, it shows up that, yes, indeed, she did complain to the FBI, and the FBI did nothing. So for whatever it is, 30 years or whatever, she has been sitting with that like she made a false, that it never happened. So, to her, she...
And that's tragic, but I'll tell you what's never come out that I've seen, for example. There's also a transcript of an interview with a witness who said that she sent women to Epstein and that Epstein had one rule, never send anyone under 18 years of age, and that she told every girl she sent there that if they were under 18, they better have a fake ID because he would kick them out. I've never seen anything about that. I've never seen the letter publicly made public from the lawyer who wrote saying pay his client $25 million and she goes away. A client who Epstein said he never saw, never heard of, otherwise, put an investigator on it, never heard of the person, and then that lawyer was on television saying all his client wanted was her day in court. I never heard any publicity about the phone calls that I got for people telling me about scammers who were playing Epstein and joked about it all of the time. So, look, I'm not trying to defend the underlying conduct. I'm saying that there's a lot more to this story.
Well, and with that, that's all the more reason. Let's get to the bottom. Let's get it all out there. Let's hang, whatever it is. Let's get it all out there. As long as we are where we are today.
But the problem is it's being used for political purposes to attack President Trump, and that's unfair. I said many times now, Jeffrey Epstein made clear there was never any inappropriate conduct by President Trump, and if there had been, he would have used it to his advantage. That I can assure you in the case against him. So it's not fair that people like this Massey and others keep trying to use these materials for political purposes. Ro Khanna, Massey, to distract from things that are going on in the world that are really important.
David Schoen, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Coming up, President Trump's newest appointee will be doing double duty. Who is it? That when the record continues.
It's our America. We built it. Courage, freedom. Millions go to Newsmax when they need to know. Start today on the free Newsmax app. Newsmax is real news for real people.
Derriere, caboose, booty, Badunkadunk. No matter what you call it, if you have hemorrhoids, your tushy is no laughing matter. So don't use a cream that treats your rear end like a joke. Get serious relief with Recticare Advanced Hemorrhoidal Cream. Recticare Advanced is seriously effective with 2 powerful medicines for rapid dual-action relief, soothing the uncomfortable swelling, itching, and pain of your hemorrhoids. For serious hemorrhoid relief for your buns, get Recticare Advanced.
From the beginning, America has depended on the courage and resilience of those who serve in our armed forces. For 250 years, they've been there for us without fail, putting their lives on the line, defending our freedom, helping us become the nation we are today. At Wounded Warrior Project, our mission honors the past by building a better future for post-9/11 veterans, service members, and their families. Our life-changing programs and services help warriors improve their mental and physical health, access the VA benefits they've earned, and connect with their communities, their purpose, and each other. Warriors have given us their best. Join us in supporting them through the next 250 years of strength, resilience, and recovery. Visit woundedwarriorproject.org/USA250.
I am a coach and an alum of Girls on the Run. Kids today carry a lot of stress, from school pressure to social isolation to overuse of devices. We create a space where girls can connect, build confidence, and learn skills like managing emotions, setting goals, and speaking up. Each child's experience is different, and families need support. I'm proud to be part of a comprehensive solution to youth mental health. Get involved today at EmpowerOurFutureCoalition.com.
It's the Blue Compass RV annual Blue Tag clearance. Save over 40% on select new RVs during our largest sale of the year. Plus, every RV comes with a 1-year VIP membership to RV Complete, a $5,000 value. Visit us online or in store today.
Greg trusts Prevagen for his brain, and this is his story.
Hi, I'm Greg. I live in Bloomington, Illinois. I'm not an actor. I'm just a regular person. 8 years ago, I just didn't feel like I was on my game. I started taking Prevagen, and I want people to know that Prevagen has worked for me. Give it a try. I want it to help you just like it has helped me. I've been taking Prevagen for 8 years now, and it's still helping me tremendously.
Prevagen has been the #1 selling brain supplement nationwide for over 10 years.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 91 years of age, here with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you.
It really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order now. You'll be glad you did.
Former United States Ambassador to the Kingdom of Denmark from 2017 to 2021, Ambassador Carla Sands joins me. Nice to see you, Ambassador.
Great to see you, Greta.
Well, there's news that the president has appointed Governor Jeff Landry of Louisiana to a part-time job, and that would be to be special envoy to Greenland. You were ambassador to Denmark, which is Greenland is a part of the kingdom. Tell me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's really something. It's a big step in President Trump's goal of securing not just the United States, but our allies in a conflict. If Greenland is in the wrong hands, and certainly Denmark can't afford to defend Greenland, it's too big a landmass, and Denmark's economy is small. It's like the size of Colorado. They cannot defend it and have never tried, really can't develop it, can't afford to. But if in a conflict, it's not just the Arctic seas that become potentially impassable if it fell into adversarial hands. It's also the Atlantic. So our ability to get to our NATO allies or even get our forces out could be harmed by Greenland not being under the United States control.
But we do have some military presence there, do we not?
Very tiny. It's actually an early warning radar system up in the north of Greenland at a base that used to be called Thule Air Base. It's now Pitofik Space Base, since President Trump wisely created Space Force. It's part of Space Force. And that is one of the ways that we get warnings, for instance, if North Korea would launch missiles, just as an example. And it's an important part of our security network, but it's not adequate. In order to secure Greenland, the world's largest island, it's literally a third the size of the continental US. We need a lot of assets in order to do that, to know who's on, above, and under the sea.
Do you see the role of the special envoy to either secure leases and lands and defense agreements with Greenland so we have a presence there? Or do you see this as to try to convince the people of Greenland that they should join the United States?
I don't know how Governor Landry is going to handle this, but I do know that although Greenland says that they have a lot of autonomy, Denmark really controls it in every important area. And Denmark recently got them to pass a law that only Danes and Greenlanders can own anything in Greenland. And that was to block President Trump and any Americans from going in and developing or having any kind of ownership. And I'm not talking about real property. There's actually no private property rights in the ground in all of Greenland, which stops them from building family generational wealth, by developing and owning homes or buildings. But they literally blocked Americans. So I think they'll have to do things through Greenlandic or Danish companies. I'm not sure how they'll put it together. But as a matter of fact, I think it will be under President Trump's guidance. He understands, he gets intelligence that the Danes don't have about the threats, and it's necessary for the safety, for the security, and for American safety, but also our allies, and like President Trump said, the world.
In terms of the way the laws are written and everything, can the people of Greenland make that decision themselves, because they are autonomous somewhat from the Kingdom of Denmark, or from Denmark? I mean, who gets to make this decision about their future?
Well, yeah, it sounds like it's with the Greenlanders, but it actually resides technically with the parliament in Denmark. The parliamentarians will have to approve any kind of like COFA, like a free association with the U.S., although I think that could be challenged in a court of law because no one owns another person, right? So they have to have some kind of autonomy. But if Denmark thinks they can own an asset that they can't afford, we all know if you can't afford to own a business or a home, you have to sell it. You can't afford, if you can't afford to defend or develop a place, I mean, that's really unfortunate. And that's why there's very little development there.
What does Denmark get out of having Greenland? It's an expense. I mean, but why?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I want to keep everything we have. But what does Denmark get out of Greenland?
Right. Well, and they used to own Iceland. Iceland went independent, in the 20th century. I think they're a world player because it makes them an Arctic nation, even though they're a tiny country of under 6 million people with not a huge GDP. It kind of puts them on the map because, like we talked about, Greenland is the world's largest island. The Danes are very, very upset about this. They've called in the U.S. ambassador, and they're really speaking very harshly about this. And it's unfortunate, but reality is, sometimes tough. And this is reality. President Trump doesn't live in the world he wishes it was. He lives in the real world.
Ambassador Carla Sands, always nice to see you. Thank you very much.
Great to see you. Thanks, Greta.
Coming up, if you're planning on traveling this holiday season, you're going to want to stick around for our next report. That one, the record continues.
Now it's a great time to play Solitaire Grand Harvest and enjoy a new world of solitaire. Brr, a cold world. This Christmas, discover all the holiday fun with exciting features from Santa, like our winter tournaments, festive mini games, and challenging levels. Ever built a farm in the snow? Tis the season to turn classic into fantastic. So download Solitaire Grand Harvest for free and see for yourself.
I'm former Mets manager Terry Collins. The Tunnel Towers Foundation is very important to me, and I look for ways to try to support them any way I can. If a first responder is killed in the line of duty, T2T will pay off the mortgage for their family. That's just one of the ways T2T makes a difference. You can support their cause as well by donating $11 a month. Go to T2T.org, let's go Mets, and let's help Tunnel Towers.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
Your cardiovascular system is a big place. Too big to assume diet and exercise are enough. Where do you start? Here, Cardiovascular Health Daily supports healthy blood pressure with ingredients backed by 5 clinical studies. And Cholesterol Health Daily, clinically researched ingredients like aged black garlic shown to support HDL levels by up to 11%. Your cardiovascular system powers everything you do. Now there's a simple way to return the favor every day. Only human.
Get ready to deck the walls with 14 days of deals at Cabinets to Go. Now through December 31st, there's nowhere better to save up to 70% on stunning kitchen cabinet collections. Then bring home even more for the holidays with deals every day on kitchen accents, accessories, and finishing touches. Plus a free 3D design consultation to help you get started. Wrap up your new kitchen before the new year for less at Cabinets to Go. Designed to wow. Sale ends December 31st.
If you're traveling this holiday season, be prepared for busy airports and heavy traffic. According to AAA, around 122.4 million Americans are expected to travel between December 20th and January 1st. That will be a new record. AAA says most travelers are expected to hit the road for their holiday trips, but around 8 million are expected to fly. People can expect the airports to be the most crowded on December 26th, the day after Christmas. As for those of you hitting the road, the least amount of traffic will be on the holidays themselves: Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day. Now for our outrage of the day. Fans at sporting events yell and scream at the professional athletes. Sometimes the fans do cross the manners line with what they say, but never should a player punch a fan in response. That's actually a crime. It's called assault. And this one got caught on camera. In yesterday's Pittsburgh Steelers-Detroit Lions game, wide receiver DK Metcalf threw a punch at a fan. The Detroit Free Press says it tracked down that fan. The fan told the paper, quote, "He does not like his government name. I called him that, and then he grabbed me and ripped my shirt. I'm a little shocked like everyone's talking to me. I'm a little rattled, but I just want the Lions to win, baby," end quote. Now, according to Lions officials, the fan was not thrown out of the game. As for Steelers player DK Metcalf, the NFL is reviewing the incident. Coming up, when police dogs meet wrapping paper, things get wild. That when the record continues.
You hear the same voices.
Donald Trump knows that's a lie.
From the same people.
Donald Trump is less lucid.
Saying the same thing.
Insults, invective, and outright lies.
And you say, enough! I'm Chris Salcedo, and I'll tell you the real news. You don't believe me? Just tune in.
Do you have a yo-yo smile? Sometimes yellow, sometimes white. It's a constant battle between everyday stains and whitening treatments. Until now, get Smile Actives, the daily teeth whitening breakthrough that gives you a more youthful smile and helps you keep it.
At 43 years old, I don't mess around with products that waste my time. Smile Actives is easy, and it works. No gloopy trays, no messy strips. Just add a little bit on top of your toothpaste when you brush your teeth. And ta-da, white teeth.
Just add Smile Actives to your favorite toothpaste and watch the magic happen. Our patented Polyclean microfoam lifts away deep stains for a dramatically younger and whiter smile.
You have a choice. You can have those yellow teeth and just be old Nana or Pop-Pop, or you can be smiling and dazzling and full of confidence. I love my white teeth.
Scan, click, or call for your whitest smile yet. And if you order right now, we'll double your whitening free. Get an extra Smile Actives as our free gift to you, but only while supplies last.
I drink coffee every day. I started noticing that my teeth were not as bright as I'd like them to be, a little dingy, but Smile Active, it works. Got your boy gleaming.
100% of users saw whiter teeth. Smile Actives lifts away even the toughest stains from coffee, wine, and food, gently restoring your bright, youthful smile. Plus, it's safe for veneers, crowns, and dentures.
It's really a no-brainer if you want to whiten your teeth.
Clinically shown to brighten your teeth 5 shades whiter in just 7 days.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Act now. Get Smile Actives for just $24.95 and we'll double your order free. But hurry, this deal won't last. Smile Actives is guaranteed to work. Whiten your teeth or get your money back. No questions asked. Don't wait. Get Smile Actives for just $24.95 and we'll send you a second bottle absolutely free. That's free shipping, a free extra bottle. That's an incredible 58% savings. Scan the code, go to smileactives.com or call to get your beautiful whiter smile now.
From drained investment accounts and stolen tax returns to lost wages and hiring lawyers, identity theft can cost you more than you might think. That's why only LifeLock offers the $1 Million Protection Package, which covers stolen funds, experts and lawyers, and out-of-pocket expenses up to $3 million in total. Don't face the high cost of identity theft alone. Protect your future and finances with LifeLock. Join today.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, the 91-year-old formulator of Immuno 150, an incredible nutritional supplement. There's nothing like it. Now, Immuno 150 is different because it contains 70 plant-derived minerals and 80 other nutrients. Dr. Linus Pauling, known for vitamin C, was instrumental in convincing me to get into the mineral business in 1983. He said the world is sick due to a lack of minerals in topsoil. He said the body needs 60 minerals, but the average food and supplement has no more than 12. That's the reason for Immuno 150. Since its inception, it's had a powerful impact on the lives of thousands of people who could not get any help from various supplements they took or their doctor. Now, I suggest you try Immuno 150 to see what 70 minerals, CoQ10, and 80 nutrients can do for you. Look at the videos on our website. Millions have. Now, consider placing an order for Immuno 150 online or call our toll-free number. I know you'll be glad you did.
Have you heard of the viral wrapping paper trend? Scottsdale Police Department is participating in the new trend with their canine unit. This trend shows police dogs ripping through colorful wrapping paper. Here are the festive canines of the Scottsdale Police Department participating in the new trend. Now, that is how you throw a Christmas party canine style. The Chris Salcedo show is up next. Also, we're standing by for the president. He's supposed to be up at 4:30, but he's late. Have a good evening.